Hey everyone, so in this video we're going to be learning Python, and if you're watching this video you must have learned something about Python, and let's just get started. So I'm not going to be covering how to install Python. You can just Google it and it will be a simple installer. uh, Other than that, let's get started. So after you have installed Python, right, so first let's know what Python is. So Python is basically a language that lets you do stuff, and you can do almost anything with Python. And the reason I like Python so much is because it's really simple. It's kind of like English only because whatever you write, it has a meaning which is much easier to understand than some other languages. And other than that, you can just it's much like it's not it's much easier to write code in Python than other languages. And so in this series we're going to start from basics like printing stuff, and then we're going to advance into like creating full-fledged applications with Python. I might not cover everything. I might miss something. So if you think that I haven't covered something, you can just mention that in the comments. So after you've installed Python, you can just check if Python's installed. Just checking the version of your Python. So currently I have 3.12. This is the latest right now. It might not be for you. It might be like 3.11 or maybe 3.13. So after you have checked the version, so basically the thing is that Python was actually like version 2, but when it got released to version 3, everywhere we use Python 3. That's it. That's why we use Python 3. Maybe it will be Python 4 when Python the fourth version will be released, but I don't know if that'll ever happen. This thing, it's like if you do like dash v, so oh, never mind. Just ignore this, okay? So this thing, right? Yeah, dash version. This is same across the board. Like even if you want to test for some other things you've installed on your system, you can just check by writing dash version whether it's installed or not. And if you don't want to do that, if you don't want to check the version, you can just type and then whatever you want to check. So if we write type then space and Python 3, it will tell us where we have Python 3 installed. So currently I have it in my Nix profile, which is basically a package manager that installs various things on my computer. um, it will definitely not be Nix for you. It will be something like Homebrew, or yeah, if you're in Windows it might be program, I don't know, program files, something like that. Yeah. So after we have checked that Python is installed on our computer, what we will do next is just load an IDLE, which is basically what it lets you do is run Python code line by line. So if you just type Python 3 in the terminal, what it will give you is basically uh, an IDLE, which is like an IDE. What an IDE lets you do is it lets you like write a file of code and then it lets you run it. But an IDLE is different because it runs every single line that you write here. So for example, if I write 1 plus 2, it will give me 3 because it ran this line, and then just whatever the answer was, it printed by itself. So even if your code doesn't print anything, it will still print the output. Pretty confusing, but yeah, that's the way it is. So in the beginning I'm thinking like I'll just go over the operators in Python. So as we know, plus is for adding, minus is for subtracting, and then you multiply using this asterisk, and you divide using a single slash. Now as you can see, when we use a single slash, it gives us 0.5, which is not an integer, right? Integer is like a number which doesn't have any floating point decimals, right? It doesn't have a decimal point. So if we want to do like an integer division, this will have to use double slash, which will give us, which will round it off to the nearest, it will basically remove this part of the number. So if I have 3 divided by 2, it will be 1.5, but if I have 3 double slash 2, it will give me 1 because it removed the decimal part of the number. Yeah, now we know what all the operators are in Python. Now what we can go over is how do you print something in Python. So currently, right, we're not actually printing, and it's just showing us whatever we're writing, right? which uh, which works here, but if you have like a separate file in which you write the code, there you'll have to specifically print something. So I feel like we can just go over there and just start coding. So if you want to just quit this IDLE, you can just run this function. I know it sounds weird, but you just write quit and just put these parentheses, and then just press enter, and then yeah, I'm just clearing stuff using clear in terminal. Now we'll just create a file which will be I guess I can just go into a directory. Yeah, so basically what I did here is make directory. Make directory basically creates a folder, and then I change directory into personal. Which folder I created, I move into that folder. So here also you can see that I am within this folder now, and here I will use touch, which basically creates a file, and call it main.py. So any file that has the extension of .py is basically a Python file. And yeah, so when I create this file, now we'll have to open it some way. So I'm going to be using Vim. You can use any text editor you want, but there's a huge probability that Vim is already installed in your computer, and if it's not, you can install it. It's pretty simple. You can use other like text editors like VS Code or Nano or NeoVim as well. So you can use NeoVim if you want. I'll just stick to Vim for now. So we have opened this file in the terminal, and there's nothing in it. Since it's a .py file, we'll be writing Python code in here. So let's get started. So if I press I now, it will let me write code in my file, and if I hit escape, it will basically not let me write code or write anything in the file. This is how Vim works, and it is what it is. So let's just start writing code. So if you want to print something in Python, for example, if you run this file, we want something to be shown in the terminal. So that's where you use print. What print does is whatever you put in these brackets, it basically prints that. So if I put 1 here, it will print 1. So if I hit escape and then colon and W, it will save the file. So as you can see, it said that it wrote 1 line and 9 bytes. And if I press colon and then Q again, it will close this file. So it closed the file. We have written code in the main.py file. One way of checking what's inside a file in terminal is to use a cat command. A cat command basically tells you whatever is in this in a file. So if I write main.py and follow it by the cat command, it will print the content of this file. So we wrote print1, and as we just saw, as we can see, print1 is inside this file. Now how do we run this code? How do we run this file? Now the thing about Python 3 or Python is basically, you know how we got into the IDLE, right? So if we just follow it with the name of the file, main.py, it will run this file. But make sure that wherever you're running this command, that directory has this file. So one way of checking the files in your directory, files and folders in your directory, you can just use ls, and it will tell you what all things are in the folder that you're currently in. So we are currently in the personal folder, and we're checking that what all files and folders are inside personal. So if we use ls, it gives us main.py. But if I created one more file called temp.txt and then do ls, it will tell us that two files exist in this personal folder. And I'll just remove this file. How do you remove? You just type rm temp.txt. Yeah, and that will remove this file. And now when we do ls, it's not there anymore. Pretty cool. Now let's run this file, because that's what we're here to do. So python 3 main.py, and as you can see, it printed out 1. Now I don't want it to print out 1. I want it to print out the answer of 1 plus 3. I don't know what it is, I don't know what 1 plus 3 is, but I want it to print that out. So I will go again into Vim, give it the file name, so main.py. I'm inside the file now. I'll press I so that I can edit this file, and here I'll write print 1 plus 2. So the thing is that what it will do is it will just calculate what 1 plus 2 is, and then it will print the answer. So if I press escape and then :W and then Q. So the thing is, last time we did :W and then :Q, but there's a shorthand notation called basically a shortcut which lets you do close as well as save and as well as close in the same command, which is combining both. So you save as well as close it, and we'll just check if we actually wrote it inside the file, which will be cat, and you can see it's printing 1 plus 2. It's not directly printing the answer. It will first have to calculate this and then print. So if we run it, also you can use your arrow keys to use your previous command so that you don't have to write them again and again. So we'll just run the same command again, and it prints out 3. Pretty cool. Okay. Now the thing is that I don't want to print just one thing inside my Python code. I want to print 1 plus 2, but I also want to print 1 minus 2. So how do I do that? Now there are several ways of doing that. We'll go inside Vim again. So one way is just having separate print functions. So if I have on the next line, I can just write print 1 minus 2. This will also do the same thing as this, and but there's one more thing we can do. So let's just run this one first. So we can use, so we just learned that we can use multiple print statements or functions, whatever, in our Python code, and it will print these uh, like sequentially, because that's how our code runs. Now, the thing is that I don't want it to be on a new line. I want it to be on the same line. How do I do that? So if you want it, uh, so if you want it in the same line, now don't use multiple print statements. Just use one single print statement. I'll just delete this one, which is basically a shortcut. If you double press D when you're not in insert mode, which means you have hit escape, you haven't pressed I, you double D and it will delete the whole line. So if I go into insert mode, and if I put a comma inside our print function and put another thing, it will just separate both of these things with a space. So what it will print is first 1 plus 2, which will be 3, and then a space, and then 1 minus 2, which will be minus 1. So let's just save this and run it again, and you can see that we printed both of these things. Now what do we want to do? I don't want for them to be separated with a space. I want them to be separated with a comma. How do I do that? So a print function has multiple, like, it can take in multiple things at the same time. So the thing is that right now we're just giving it what to print, right? We're not telling it how to separate both of these things. But the great thing about this print function is that we can even tell it what should it separate these two things with. So we can give it something called sep. Hopefully I remember how it was. So if you give sep equals, and here I give comma, it will separate both of these things with a comma. I hope this works. I don't really remember if this was how you wrote it, but yeah. So as you can see, it separates both of the answers with a comma. Now if you go back in the text editor again and just analyze the code. So as you can see, for what it had to print, we didn't specify like what it's going to be, but for the comma we had to specify with something called a sep. Now this has to be exactly the same. So let's just suppose I give you something, right? I give you a text. By default, if I give you anything, you'll consider it as a text. So even if I don't tell you what it is, you'll still consider it as a text. So that's how print works. So if I'm not giving anything to print, I just give it like one thing, it will consider it as a text and just print it. Okay. But if I exclusively like say, okay, this is not a text, you're not supposed to print it, you're supposed to use it as a separator, then it will use it as a separator. So the thing is, if I didn't put this, right, it would just print comma, which is not what we want to do. We want it to use this as a separator. Sorry. And that's what it's going to do when we actually specify this as a separator. Now, I hope this is clear. Now, next thing I want to come at is basically in Python or any language out there are two things that like are basically common in every single language. And the first thing is that there are numbers and then there are strings. So a number is basically a number. It can be 1, 2, 2.0, or -1, -2. And the thing with numbers is that like you don't have to cover them with anything. If you write 1, it's 1. If you write 2, it's 2. If you write 3, it's 3. But what a string is, it's for characters. For example, A. If you want to, if you want Python to know that you actually want the character A, you have to cover it with something like this, like double quotes, which basically tells Python or any language that it's a string. And what is a string? A string is basically a set of characters. What is a character? A character is something on your keyboard. For example, a comma, MNB space X123. Something on your keyboard is a character. And a list of characters or a series of characters is basically a string. Let's take it this way. In English, there are alphabets. All of those alphabets are characters. And in English, there are words and sentences. All of those words and sentences are strings. I hope that's clear. Now, a character can also... Now, there is one thing that's really important here. So if you want this, is this a string or a number? Now, since it's included by these double quotes, it's actually a string. But this, it's actually a number because it's not included by these double quotes. So what is the difference? Why is something like this different than something like this? If you print this, it will give you 1 2 1 2 1 2 1. It won't give you these. If you print this, it will give you exactly the same thing. Then why is it different? Why is this different from this? Now the thing is that this is a string and this is a number. A string, you cannot like add something to a string. If you tried adding like 2 to it, it won't work. It would work in a different way, but it won't add 2 to this number. The answer won't be if I just add 2 to this number, the answer should be this, right? But it won't be because it's a string. You're not able to add, subtract, divide, multiply with a string. A string is basically we're telling the computer that this is what we're giving to you, this is how it's supposed to be. But numbers are like you can compute on this, you can subtract, you can divide on this. You know, it's supposed to be a number. But string, you can join two strings, like you can join them, but you cannot like add them or subtract them, you know. So that's the difference between number and a string. I hope that's clear. So the reason I explained that is because the separator actually takes a string and we can put anything we want here. So currently we're separating with a comma, right? But if we want a space and comma, that will also work. So if I save and quit and run it, it gives space and comma, but I wanted comma and space because this doesn't look good. So I'll remove the space and add it afterwards. Yeah, this works, right? Now you might be thinking, right, what is this useful? Why are we even learning this? Is this what the future is, like printing stuff? No, it's not. But the thing is, You gotta start somewhere. This is simple right now, and I know it might be hard or it might be really simple, but if you just directly go on to like full-fledged applications using Python, it will be really, really difficult, and that's why we're taking it so slow. And before ending this video, I know it has been really long, and I have been like explaining stuff that is like out there, but I just wanted to add one more thing. So if you wanted for like if you wanted to have another print function, right? What you saw last time is that it prints it by default on a new line. You know, that's what I told you. So if you use another print function, it by default it goes to a new line. But we don't want that. you know? So first let's understand why it's happening. So every print function in Python, what it does is by default at the end it puts a new line character. So there are multiple types of backspace characters in all of the languages. So let's just list out them first. So there are multiple types of characters. First is \n. What this does is wherever you put this in a string, wherever you put this, it will have a new line basically. So for example, if I have facil/n and then 1 to 3, what it will print is facil and then 1 to 3. Okay, so it acts like a new line, and if you want to test that out, we can do that as well. So I could just I could just convert this into a string, and what do you think will the output of this will be? I hope you're right, because I'm going to print it, and I won't tell you. It will be exactly what we wrote, because it's not a number, it won't compute, it will write exactly what we wrote inside of the double quotes. Now if I put like \n after 1 minus, what will it do? It will basically have a new line. So it didn't print out \n, it has a new line, it added a new line after the minus. Pretty cool. Now if we go back and let's discuss some more, you can find these on the internet. There are many. So there is \t, which basically adds a tab. So a tab is on your keyboard. This is a tab. This is 1, 2 tabs, 3, 4, 5. This is a tab. There are many more. I don't really remember, but these two are the majority of. I think there's \b, but I'm not sure. So the reason I was telling you this is basically Python adds a \n here by default. You don't write it, Python writes it for you in every single print function. So what's happening right now is, even though we didn't specify \n on our behalf here, it automatically added it. So as I told you, like if you don't specify this separator, it takes it by default as a square, as a space. So if we don't specify a separator, it takes it default by space. And there is another argument called end, which basically tells us what character should be there in the ending. So by default it takes it as a \n. And yeah, so if we don't want it to go on a new line, we can just replace it with something else. Let's just replace it by 3 stars, and we'll just write it and save it and run it. So as you can see, it printed out 3 stars instead of going on the new line. Here it went on the new line, but here it printed out 3 stars. So I think that's all about print functions, and I don't think there's anything else that you need to know. But the best thing about programming is that many things you learn along the way. It's not like you have to know everything in the beginning. You just have to know enough to start, and that's what we're all here to do. We're not going to have like a specified course of some sort where you'll just learn everything before starting. I don't recommend that, because that way you'll just burn out and you won't enjoy the process. The most important thing is to enjoy the process and just you know keep experimenting with things and just learn by doing, and just start. So I told you about print today. What if I just wanted you to print like 5 statements on new lines without using 5 print statements? Like, I want you to print. Okay, let's just give you some tasks here. I'll just open this file again and just write here. Yeah. So I want you to print this. How would you do that with just using one print statement? So that's what one thing you can do. And I want you to print like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 using one print statement. I want you to print like this with just one print statement. How would you do that? And you can even like print this whole thing using 5 print statements, if you could do that. So this one, I don't think like I explained the last one as much, so I'll just tell you right now. So if you use print, right, this is one print function. You can have multiple things specified here. So if you want, you can just have print this, then print this, print this, print this, and this. So for these you'll have to use extra statements, extra print functions. So we'll just do this and specify end as nothing, and then we use print and we go 1, 2, 3, and separator as comma, and then print. Then we will have our closing bracket, and we don't have to specify end because there's nothing after this. So this is how you can print this. I will just run it for the sake of it. Let's just insert mode. Yep. So if I run this, oops, so here I didn't specify the end. You have to also specify the end here, otherwise it will be \n. We don't want it to be \n, so I'll just have it as an empty string. An empty string is basically having nothing, not even white space or anything. So this is how you can print this. Yeah, so I guess that was it. Printing things in Python, and a bit of Vim, a bit of like terminal. And what I'd recommend you to do is use terminal as much as you can. I know it sounds pretty like you have to do so many manual things right now. Like for example, Python 3, you don't have to write it in like a VS Code. You just click on one button and it runs the code for you. You don't have to write this whole thing. But this is universal, you know. Everywhere you go, even if you don't have your own machine, you can just load up the terminal and just start doing this stuff, you know. And even if you don't have your own machine, you can use Vim, and Vim would be the same across the board. It won't be different. You don't have to set anything up, you don't have to download anything. And that's the best part about doing things from your terminal. And also it makes you look cool, so everybody will be like you're hacking and all, and that would be really like, you know, respect. You know, like that respect plus plus in missions in GTA. Yeah, so I guess this is it. I'll just end it for now. I hope I'm not missing anything. So yeah, see you in the next one.